Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Medic Side Hustle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shubhendra Kulshresh, helping clinicians like you make medicine your side hustle. Today, my guest is another KMC alumni, Fazin Nasr. He's one of my juniors from KMC, and he's doing something fantastic. So, if the listeners of this podcast have ever been thinking about going into health tech, AI, developing an app, then Fazin's your man. He's a doctor, but also a developer, and he's the man behind the amazing new rebuild of the Peer website. In the second half, I'm going to give him the mic to ask me some questions that he'd like to ask. And live audience, you get to ask us your questions as well. So put them in the comments and we'll come to them at the end of the episode. Thanks so much for joining me today, Faz. How are you?
How are you? Thank you so much for inviting me, man. And it's nice to see you again after what has been probably a couple of years, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while. I think life has changed so much since then. Tell us what's been happening since Manipal, or like, did you start doing the developer stuff while you were there?
Yeah, interestingly, I had done some things and during my college days, it was during the internship time where I had gotten some free time, just after finishing our final year exams. And I think that was then when I got kind of interested in development, coding. The first things that I tried was Python, and that was around the time when these image recognition AI was picking up. So yeah, pretty much that's when I started. After I finished internship, I worked for a edtech startup that was also coming up in India at the time. That was for postgraduate medical education in India. We have an entrance exam that lots of doctors sit for. Pretty much everybody sits for that exam. And we came up with this idea of building this app where rather than the traditional way of having going to a classroom and sitting and studying and preparing with your peers, we try to bring that environment to the home, in an app format where you can do your quizzes and things like that. And that was not seen at the moment at the time. And we were very design focused, UI focused, and also taking a lot of feedback from the users. So that at that point is when I started learning more about development aspect. And I had strayed away from medicine a little bit during that point, partly because of COVID and travel restrictions. I couldn't practice medicine where I was, and I couldn't travel outside the country at the time. But anyhow, finally things turned around. The pandemic got over. I got curious about medicine again. I wrote my exams, got here to the UK, and it's been about 1.5 to 2 years coming since I've been here. And I've been working here in London as an A&E doctor, and I really enjoy it.
Lovely. Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think a story very similar to many of our listeners, and I resonate with a lot of those elements of saying, of having that odd relationship with medicine where you're not
Mhm.
100% committed, and it feels odd because most of the people around you are like, oh yeah, that's all I can do for the rest of
Mhm.
my life. When was perhaps the first time that you started to think about something beyond just doing a clinical job? And you mentioned that you were kind of straying away from medicine. Was that the first time you thought about this, or was this always kind of on your mind that you might do something in the tech space?
It's interesting that you ask because I don't think that was the first time. So I was born and brought up in Dubai. I did my schooling and things there. And something quite personal to me, my elder sister, she's a couple of years elder to me, and she had gotten married when I was still a little kid. And by that, probably 11, 12 years old at the time. And my brother-in-law was in the tech space, and he used to work on software and hardware development. He was mostly in tech support related and tech solutions. And he used to bring home computers at a time when I was quite young. And he used to challenge me. He used to say, as long as you don't physically damage the computer, do whatever you want, tinker with it, delete that file, see what happens. And it was a challenge for him as well to try and fix it and sharpen his skills. But inadvertently, while he was sharpening his skills, I also, got really intrigued by it. And I've broken so many broken things so many times and watched him fix it back up. And then at that point, I think it sort of gave me the courage to tinker around, knowing that, no matter what I do, at the end of the day, if it's not physically damaged, it is, reversible. And I think some of these concepts might come in handy in my life even to this day.
Mm. Yeah, I resonate with that. I grew up experimenting a lot. I grew up in a family of engineers, and there's just
Mm,
this way of like, oh, take it apart. And like, I've gotten
mm,
burnt trying to open up a coffee machine because it wasn't working and things like that. So I appreciate that. It's a very nice kind of way to learn something in terms of like a safe space to experiment, nothing goes wrong. How did you
mm.
then get into medicine?
Yeah, and that's quite interesting, right? Because there's a stark contrast. You can't, mess around with people's bodies and then
Mm,
learn the hard way.
yeah.
Uh you gotta approach it differently. And I think right from the get-go, medicine was also very interesting to me because of the aspect where we are able to help people. I think it's that the nobility associated with the profession and the fact that, you can make a very positive change in somebody's lives. I think that resonated with me a lot. And coming through med school, it sort of feels at this point, like a thing that you have to do. You
Mm.
eat, drink, sleep, practice medicine, and for your interests and sort of for your work, you can kind of do your development or pursue your other interests. So that's sort of how I see medicine at this point. But then joining med school, I was like, very interested about the nobility aspect. So
Mm.
yeah.
Okay.
What
And
about you? What motivated you?
yeah, that's a good question. I think why I'm here is because I think I've always had this picture or this imagination of getting your career right. And I think that means different things to everybody. But I think for me, it really is optimizing who you are innately and reaching your inner potential, and then doing it in a way that kind of gives you the control you want over your career. And for the longest time, I was kind of really running away from entrepreneurship, but where I am now is like, oh, that is really a way of fulfilling your potential, and there's risks and balances to it. So yeah, there's more in that story we can come to, but I want to get
Mhm,
back to you and be like, what
mhm.
happened in Manipal and what happened after Manipal, because I know Manipal is a beautiful place and there's lots of projects always ongoing, lots of student clubs. When did your developer side kind of transact the development of you as a doctor, and where did that lead you?
So during my internship itself, I got this wonderful opportunity to do a rotation in neonatology. I don't know if during your time when you were practicing, I think it was just pediatrics, but then there was a slot open and then I went ahead and took that opportunity. So for those who don't know neonatology, we look after kids who are just under 30 days old, and it sort of revolves around the neonatal ICU itself, so intensive care unit. So while working there, we had a professor who was trained in the US and had returned to India and was practicing there. And he was very focused, very he wanted to, bring in changes, and he was, listening about image recognition AI that was,
Mm,
that had just gotten mainstream where you could run it in your computers. It had gotten, optimized to the point you didn't need supercomputers anymore. X-ray detection algorithms, back in 2018, I guess, 2018, 2019, image recognition software is, sending. We got together and then we realized one of the pain points at the time was that once we placed endotracheal tube for the babies, we do an X-ray to make sure that it's placed in the right place. But you need a radiologist to identify that. Most of the time, it's placed by the nursing staff, and then they need to be sure that it's placed in the right place. And sometimes you need to wait till the radiologist, sees the X-ray and then reports it, and there's like a huge time lag. So we came up with a software. So this is the beginning to identify the AT tube in those X-rays so that we can know whether it's placed right or not. And then I think that's when it clicked for me how we can intersect AI and in medicine and the huge, huge potential that's there underused. And medicine as an industry itself always lags behind in terms of tech, be it fintech or edtech. They adopt things quicker, but we
Hmm.
lag behind for the right reason so that we do it the right way. But that gives us the opportunity to learn from the mistakes that, other industries have done or learn from the lessons that they have gained.
Yeah.
So as doctors, we have that advantage, as medics, we have that advantage to learn from other industries.
Yeah. So just kind of digging deeper into that moment. So you're a med student,
Mm.
kind of finishing your MBBS. You've learned across this, and then you've kind of been brought up with this experimentation, exposure to digital software life, and that perspective of you as well. What was some of the biggest challenges for you at that point to actually get started in trying to do something meaningful and make a difference?
Uh, I guess uh, one of the challenges is, in fact, balancing, right? Balancing our own practice because being a doctor is a demanding job. I'm sure you'd relate as well. You got to put in lots of hours into it, not only as part of your work, but surrounding your work, your training, your portfolio building and things like that. And simultaneously, experimenting, finding time to experiment and, finding time to get other people interested in that as well. And often intersecting with people who are interested in what you are is also kind of challenging in our field because most of the time what I have experienced is that doctors are not too keen into that. They're more interested in refining their own skills and
Hmm.
gaining their more of their own experience in their own fields. So we often think within our specialties or within our boxes. We tend to not think outside. It had been that's also another challenge that I faced, coming across or crossing paths with people like that. I'm glad I crossed paths with you again. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It really is interesting. And so was this the time you were kind of starting to learn Python? Was that your first step that you took?
Yes, yes, that was one of the first steps that I took. But I think, that is sort of like in fact, it's not too long ago, but that has now sort of become an outdated way of learning things. I think back when we were teaching things in Marrow, we used to have, top-down and bottoms-up approach of, learning things. So I kind of did the top-down where, I learn individual, definitions and things like that, and from the top
Hmm.
down. But rather the bottoms up, where work back from the results. I think that is a more efficient way of learning. And if I could do it again, I would have done it differently. But yes, that's how I started,
What would you do
Python
differently?
courses. Well, now I would think about problems and solutions and work backwards from there. So if there's a problem in my workplace where I need to, do some of my note taking or my clerking or writing letters to the GPs, those sort of things. If I can find ways to automate it, I found a problem, and then I work back to the solution. How do I solve this? And then what
Hmm.
do I need for it? And then bring in the AI to help me with that. So I
Yeah.
think that's how I would do it now. And then I would learn how to solve the problem rather than learning the coding because the AI has gotten it figured out now.
Yeah, and we're going to come to that. So the listeners, we're going to be doing a bit of a demo for you soon as well. So stay tuned. I think you're spot on. I think being the problem solver is always the bigger problem. The people element behind it is always the challenging bit as well,
Mm,
especially when it comes to something new, any early adoption, any innovation, and a
mm.
huge chunk of what I was doing in my quality improvement role and quality coaching role as well. But some of the people listening to this might be like, oh, that's all well and good, but like, how do you actually get those opportunities? Like, I'm looking for a job in health tech. Like, what should I do? And people have told them to like do a project or get some experience. How did you get your foot in the door when you started with all of this?
That's quite interesting how I got my foot in the door. So I was pretty much, so this was the time, around 2019 when I had just finished my internship, just finished my med school. And internship, as you can imagine, would is quite hectic. And then, I was kind of fed up of medicine. So I was looking for doctor jobs, jobs that were for doctors, but non-clinical roles, right? So I was just keen to take anything up that would come my way. And that's when I got a role of a medical editor, which pretty much has nothing to do with tech, but it
Mm.
was for a tech startup. But that's how I got my foot in the door. I initially joined there thinking that I would do a 3 month sort of they had like a probation period of 3 months. So I thought I'll do that 3 months, come back, give my exams, and then, it was sort of like my
Mm.
break. But then when I went there, that's when I started. I met more doctors who had, ideas beyond medicine. The CEO of my startup at the time, he himself was a doctor who had specialized in general medicine, internal medicine, and then he went into the startup space and he built that startup. So he was sort of an inspiration for me as well. And that got me connected to, different people. I came across lots of doctors who came in to do sort of 3 months, 4 month role. I ended up staying there for 2 years, but
Okay.
and I grew beyond the role of the medical editor. That was something that I did only for 3 months, but that's what I realized, right? Like being sometimes it's luck, but I think we need to put ourselves out there and think beyond, because if you look at medicine like something that's always going to be part of your life, it's always going to be a part of your life. Look out for opportunities, something interesting, non-clinical roles,
Yeah.
and look for try to get in touch with interesting people who are doing interesting things, right? If there's a nice startup with a cool CEO behind it, see if you can get a role there.
Yeah, I know Ams and Abdullah are very, very cool, aren't they? Tell me
Yes.
about that. How'd you meet them? How'd you get into peer?
So I met them through one of my friends who worked here, who was my colleague here in our hospital itself. And then through them, I met AMS. AMS was introduced to me through my friend, and then we spoke with each other. And at the time, I was personally working on a startup called Neurally Med. This was when I was preparing for my PLAB exams. And then I
Mm.
thought, and at the time, I was using the help of AI to prepare for myself. And then I had made some notes and some question banks. So I thought, why not, like make it public and, have people. And I built a chatbot as well so that you can chat and learn better, kind of like Khan Academy style, but for the PLAB exams.
Mm.
So I was working on that project at the time, and that's when I met Abs. Then, couple of months down the lane, when I came back here, uh, he offered me an opportunity, and I joined them, and they were the wonderful guys.
Wait, wait, wait,
And
wait, wait.
yeah, Yeah, so that's pretty cool actually, because they were looking for they wanted to, bring in the news feeds from different platforms into their platform, centralized, make it easy for content consumption for users.
Mm.
And this involved some sort of AI summarization. And interestingly, at the time, because when I was working on my own project with AI summarization to summarize the hard textbook content into digestible formats. So there our skills crossed. I mean, our paths crossed because my
Yeah.
skills were needed here, and that was something that he was looking for.
Yeah.
And I tried out, even without him offering me any sort of job or anything. Just that concept was interesting to me, and I thought if I could, try and build it myself. And then I tried and built it, and I showed it to Ams, and he really loved it. And he was like, "Yes, do you wanna, work with us for,
Wow.
more projects and things like that?" And then we looked into peer, and then at the time we decided, you know what, let's start fresh. Let's, things have changed too much over the past couple of months. We need to like, stay on the cutting edge. And that's when, they also got, hyped by the energy and the things happening in the industry as well. And then we decided we'll revamp the whole thing. And then within like 2 to 3 weeks, we had like a new working prototype. Then we did 1 or 2 weeks of testing, and within like a month or so, we managed to revamp the whole thing. Still a work in progress, pushing out things as fast as we can. And my role essentially is something that I really like to do, which is to like look out for new opportunities, stay on the cutting edge, and uh, Hans, being the wonderful CEO that he is, lets me do whatever I want.
Yeah, he's amazing. I think somewhere at this point, I also had a conversation with him, and we were kind of doing a back and forth on like what's it like being the user and somebody who uploads videos and things like what would you like from the platform, and then you guys went and built it, and I was like, this is amazing. And by the way, if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, we're talking about peer.io. And wait, is it peer.io?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it is
Peer.io.
.io. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I've just shared that in the comments as well. So go check it out. It's a fantastic community for healthcare professionals. And I think there's going to be two types of people listening to this. There's going to be the kind of people who are like really annoyed being like, here I am trying to look for a job in health tech. I don't have mentors. I'm trying to get in. And this guy's just been offered a job on the back of like some friends introducing him. And then there's going to be the other kind of people who are going like, oh, that's really smart. Like, I'm wasting my time just sitting and constantly planning how to make this a success instead of just doing. Because what I'm hearing from your story, Faz, is that you never, I mean, at least you haven't said this so far, is that you didn't make like all of these fancy plans and like do big market surveys and like try and create a product that was going to change the world and change your life and make you a millionaire. You just kind of did little bits here and there, and you just kind of like went along with your life, and these skills gradually added up in the background, and then suddenly an opportunity appeared where your skills were good enough for them. Is that how you see it as well?
Yes, absolutely. And everybody's skills would be unique to their own as well. And I'm sure people wouldn't be able to relate to the whole of my journey, but there'd be bits of it that they would relate to. And no two people's journey are the same, isn't it? But it definitely comes into leaning into your own strengths, your own experiences, your own past, and leverage it with what's coming up new. Try and talk about things that are interesting to you, what you're passionate about, and I'm sure that will be picked up by people around you, by the right people around you, and you just strike something that you're interested about doing, and that's something that you would be passionate about it too. And I think, like you said, if it feels like a chore, it probably end up becoming a chore.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, we're getting some massive engagement on LinkedIn. Lots of people sending the support and the love and finding what you're saying really insightful and inspiring. So, yeah, I just thought I'd let you know because I know we can't see it across here on the
Oh
other
yes, oh
side.
yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, that's so true. I think the journeys are really, really interesting. And when your
Paths
paths
cross.
cross with different worlds, then the value of that is so unique to you and your journey and your experience. And that's kind of what I help people realize and bring to life in the actionship as well. Maybe Abdul's here. Hearing us amazing. Hey, Abdul. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, I think it's sometimes you can be fortunate enough to do that, and then some people kind of have to build it for themselves and go out and be quite intentional. And I think whoever you are, really the first thing is to make the decision to do it. And as soon as you make the decision to do it, kind of everything comes towards you and you find all of those solutions out there. Now, I do want to get into AI and vibe coding, but before I do, I promised Nada a little advertisement for what she's doing, and it's very much related to what we're talking about today. Nada was an older guest on one of the previous episodes. She's a physician who does acute medicine and emergency medicine, and I think gastro. And she's a
Wow.
Harvard Med School trained healthcare innovator and an AI educator who runs the AIX Medical Workshop series. So she helps transform patient care through hands-on training that covers real clinical AI use cases, ethical challenges, and how to safely bring AI into daily practice. It's designed for clinicians by a clinician. She says spots are limited and you can sign up at AIXmedical.com. So I just thought it was a good moment to talk about that before we go into our chat. about AI. So tell me where that's taking you. And I know you helped them with their AI dashboard. What's happened since then, and how are you using AI for yourself?
I think, the AI for myself, there's lots of things that I've been doing. So it's like, kind of difficult to bring it around. But I think what most recently that I did was we had to do a quality improvement project in our A&E. So that essentially involves a lot of data collection and then number crunching. And then I've been working with AI to try and figure out how to do it in an efficient way because data collection is a very tedious job and we don't want to waste the precious time of doctors, right? So if I can figure out a way to do that efficiently, then hopefully it can help query project all over the country, isn't it? But
Yeah.
at least if it helps me, that's good for the time being. So that's what I'm working on most recently now, and peer as well. So from the peer perspective, we're working on bringing a jobs board so that, most of our viewers also would be interested in that, I'm sure, where, it becomes easy to find, search, filter, sort, jobs all over the place, bring it together in one place, that's sort of the idea. So can help people, find jobs that are more tuned to their own skills, to their own story, to their own experiences. So yeah, that's also something interesting that I'm working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neat. Neat. And then you're also into vibe coding. So I guess for people who aren't in that zone, tell them what vibe coding is all about.
So I think vibe coding is something that one of the OpenAI engineers, I think was it Andre? I think Andre Karpati. I think he was the one who came up with it. But it's kind of nice now compared to the good old days. I say good old days, but it was just like 3 or 4 years back. Back in the good old days when you had to, when you pick up project as a developer, you need to figure out a lot of things. You need to learn the language. You need to have, join forums so that you can ask doubts to other people. That was sort of the way things went. But now you don't need to do anything. You just need to figure out what your problem and what your solution would look like, and the AI does the coding for you. But that's just a very simplistic way of thinking about it because even though AI, we call it artificial intelligence, I like to look at it like alien intelligence. It's intelligent enough, sure, but it's not like the sort of intelligence that you would expect us humans to have, or what we usually associate the word with. You can think of it as an infinitely skilled person, but, someone who lacks complete direction. So
Interesting. I think
that's
I
how.
heard the analogy that you should treat AI like a first year intern, someone who's like very enthusiastic and has read
Mm,
lots of books, but doesn't
yeah.
actually know how to make the decisions. And you just got to supervise them and watch them very
Super.
closely.
Watched very closely, right? And uh, it sort of makes sense as well. I think I like to bring the analogy of medicine here. I mean, if you are given just an ECG strip and asked to interpret, uh, as a doctor, your first, instinct is to gather more context, right? Does he have chest
Hmm.
pain? Was he dizzy? What's the context? How long has it been since he's had his chest pain? And that's how you interpret the ECG. And it's the same with AI. Like the more and more context you give it, the more direction you give it, the more you yourself are sure of the solution that you're looking for. That's when I feel like you get the results. So, yeah,
Yeah.
like, I think when earlier when you mentioned about this call, I think we were talking about how to revamp your
Yeah, and
portfolio.
Faz was like, let's just show them. Like, this is easier to show, and we're like, okay, let's do it. So yeah, go for it, Faz. He's gonna try and break down my website and then vibe code it back. I think that's what my understanding of it is. And I guess for those who are kind of thinking like, how do I get into this coding space? I need to learn Python. It's going to take forever. Times have changed. You don't really need to anymore. And I think we want to show you how to do that. So go ahead,
Yeah,
Faz.
yeah, absolutely. There's no barrier to entry pretty much. So I think what I would like to do is kind of remain sort of tool agnostic. So by that, I mean, we'll just go through some of the concepts so that, whatever tools that we are using, we are able to bring in those things here. So there's a very interesting course online. It's a collaboration between Replit, which is a coding development and a deployment platform, and deep learning AI, deeplearning.ai, that website. And they have put out a course where they go through a bit of vibe coding. It's like a 1.5 hour course. I found that quite interesting. But this is some of the things that they discussed. So whatever it is that we are doing, we need to think of it in five broad principles. So here we are thinking about Shubh's website. So we we need to think about what we want from the website, right? Think about the goals and outcomes and think about how much detail that you want to be. Think about how you would finally visualize it. And I think earlier when we had a chat, Shub mentioned some of the colors that he liked, some of the fonts that he liked, and he had even shared a mood board. So, Shub, do you wanna talk about what a mood board is?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
by the way, for anyone who's just listening, we are sharing the screen. So, if you want to go back and either on Spotify, or YouTube, or Peer, watch this, that'll be useful for you. But yeah, to be honest, I didn't know what a mood board was till like a few months ago. And then someone said, like, oh, here's how you can rebrand with AI, because there's now also vibe marketing, which
Mhm.
is all about using AI to do your marketing for you. So, to be honest, fonts and those images and those colors that you chose weren't entirely me. I'm not that inclined towards aesthetics. But I went to AI and I said, can you describe my brand based on everything we've talked about and everything you know about me? And here's my website as well. Take some inspiration from here because I built my website and I chose the fonts and colors that I liked. And then it described everything for me. And I said, okay, can you put it onto a mood board? And it did that. And a mood board essentially is kind of like a collection of images and symbols and colors and fonts that showcase the personality behind your brand, I guess. And I think it's really useful when it comes to building a website because that's what you kind of go off in terms of choosing the colors and the themes and everything else.
Yeah, so yeah, essentially you're trying to build a picture of what the final product is going to look like, right? So mood boards come in handy, anything that you can visualize, anything that you can see, anything that you can think of. And coming to what Shubh has done, like the research, what sort of fonts would look like. And you don't need to do it, you don't need to know everything. You can still, ask AI, use a different AI, use ChatGPT, use Claude, ask some questions to ChatGPT. Have some fun with it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Use
yeah.
whatever is new and shiny out there. Have some fun with it. And then do sort of like like your research process, your thinking process.
Mm,
And this is essentially where you are thinking about your outcomes, right? And then now the next step, I would say we need to think about how to build it, right? So now the framework, what you're going to use to build it. So here again, I would say we need to learn from and learn with AI. So that is just like what I was going to talk about. So what Shubh has done. So there are lots of things when it comes to development and deployment. It's front end, back end. You can get familiarized with it. There are different frameworks that we use for web development, be it HTML, React, whether you want to build a mobile app. You can do some research around it and figure out the building blocks for your website. So I think as far as Shub's website is concerned, for example, Shub could ask ChatGPT, what's the simplest way to build a website? And they would say it's HTML, which is what the whole world runs on. So that's what we are going to use. And then
okay.
that would be like, like our second step. Then then I would talk about having some sort of way to have checkpoints because, when you write code. the outputs. You need to have a way to, track the sort of changes that you're going through with. So there's GitHub and then there's Replit, which are like, I would say that the top two. GitHub is sort of like the gold standard. It's been traditionally used by all the developers. That's where you store your code and where you track changes going on to your code. We can touch on GitHub a little bit some a couple of minutes down the line. And then we need to be prepared for the AI to make lots and lots of mistakes, but that's okay. AI knows to correct itself as long as you prompt it. We just need to be prepared for a lot of back and forth. And that's where the checkpoints come in handy so that you can go back to where you were and then come back again. And then once you have something, nice, you can always iterate more and more, but always we need to remember that context is king, and people always say garbage in, garbage out. So
Yeah.
make sure that you can give as much context as you can, include anything that you're already an existing files and things. So make sure that you're included. Certain platforms like Lovable and I think Replit as well, they do that in the background by itself, but it's something to be aware of, right? So that that the AI might not have the whole context at all times, and that sometimes you just need to prompt it or make sure that those files are
Yeah.
attached.
Okay, so I'm coming at this from like someone who's not done this before, who doesn't code. I mean, I did a bit of HTML logo in QBasic when I was like 6 or 7 years old or something. I've completely forgotten it. I have a little bit of logical thinking still left in my brain, but coming at this, I'm like, okay, I have to figure out what I actually want. Like that's my job.
Mm,
What do I like? What do I not like? What's the end goal? And then there's a couple of frameworks to use, and then AI is going to make mistakes. So I've got to keep saving my code onto GitHub.
mm.
That's what I've figured out so far. So take me from there in terms of like, what does it actually look like? How do we get to finally creating a website?
So yeah, I think Google has made some waves recently by bringing out their new models, which they have given out for completely free. So that's something that we can leverage. So we need to start by writing a prompt. So I would say, get a notepad, try writing something, write, edit, write, and then come up with something like this. So what I had come up with yesterday, last night, was, a prompt like this. So create a single page HTML profile website using existing content from, the Coach with Shub website, converting the Wix source code. So I think your current website is on Wix, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
And then converting it into like a modern, responsive redesign using Tailwind. So this one single sentence, I've put quite a bit of thought in it, encompassing the whole thing that we're doing, right? And picking out the key elements so that the AI knows what it needs to do. So it needs to know that it's got to be an HTML website, what design it needs to use, what exactly is its task. And then we can go through the things that are needed one by one later. So you can
right. And what's
sort
what's
of
Tailwind?
Tailwind. So Tailwind is another framework that is used to style HTML web pages.
Okay.
So
So normally something that a developer would write when they're writing HTML code, they would use Tailwind as one of the frameworks.
yes.
Okay.
So if you ask AI, so we could probably ask, what is Tailwind and how does it help, with
So those listening right now,
web
we're inside
design?
Google AI Studio, which is where we're going to build something. But it also does thinking and answering of questions, it looks like.
Yes, it's essentially you get a chat box, pretty much familiar, which we are all familiar with from ChatGPT. So just ask the question. So it talks about framework in, looks sort of complex to me, isn't it?
Oh,
You
yeah,
can
I
ask it to
might say like
simplify.
explain it to a fifth grader. But let's go
Yeah,
back to the
simplify
original
it for me.
prompt. Let's go back to the original prompt and we can take it from there.
So you come up with a prompt like this. So you sort of have to iterate it. So you would probably start with something simple as a one-liner. Say, uh, I want to modify this website that I currently have. What do I need to do? And then you iterate using the outputs from your first prompt, and then you build out from there. And that's when you end up with what looks like a really nice prompt. And there are certain services like Prompt Perfect, or or if you Google Prompt Improver, there are prompts that improve your own prompts. So,
Okay.
so that's when you get into AIception territory. So
Mm.
Uh, anyhow, so you come up with a fairly simple prompt that just talks about, how you want the website to be, how the different animations are gonna look like, how the content is gonna be organized, and and then finally, what I am going to do is open your current website,
Mm-hmm.
which is coachwithshub.com. This is your current website,
Yeah, that's
isn't
right.
it?
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can inspect the source code, and this would be the source code of your website. So I'm just gonna copy and paste the whole thing into the chat box here
Right. Okay.
and click enter. So this would take a couple of seconds to load. Roughly, when I ran it the previous time, it took around 2 hours thereabout.
So right now, what is it doing? Like, why would it not just copy the same code back again? What's the how does it decide what changes to make?
So what we have done with this prompt essentially is your website source code is quite
Is
large,
huge.
but let's start from the beginning. So what I have done here, while it loads, let's talk about this some more. I've written this prompt, which you can start with a very simple prompt and then iterate from there, or you can give it your best shot and write a really nice prompt and then put in the source code of the page that I have just
Okay.
copy pasted.
So you've given it technical requirements, design and user experience goals. You've set animation and interaction, content
Hmm.
migration instructions. Interesting. So preserve all existing content, organize into logical sections, source code processing, analyze the provided code, and extract content and structural elements. Deliverables are provide a single compatible HTML5 file. Okay, so you're literally breaking down every little step for it so it knows very clearly what it's doing.
What it's doing. So how I built this is I've probably started with one line and then
Hmm.
I iterated in the background with on ChatGPT or something else, and then came up with this prompt where it literally breaks down every single thing.
Right. Okay.
And then I gave it the source code of your current website, which is quite large. Fortunately, the newer AI models can handle large text chunks like this. And then now what the AI is doing is it's actually doing thinking process. So that's
Yeah.
what these guys call it now, thinking. So what the AI is essentially, it's just going through breaking down the problem even more. Because the more the AI breaks down the problem, the better it gets. That's just how large language models work. So
Hmm.
here the AI itself is doing its self-thought, defining the conversion, refining the workflow, defining the content structure, outlining the strategy, blah, blah, blah. We just let it think, right?
Yeah.
And then finally, it starts generating the HTML file. So this, like what we had asked it to do, we asked it to generate just a single file, which encompasses the whole website, right? This is just so that it's just easy for us to do and we don't have to deal with any of the code per se, because we are not going to deal with, that's not what vibe coding is about, right?
Yeah.
So we just let the AI generate it. So as you can see, it's writing all this very complex looking code quite confidently. And I think it's probably got
Half
three
wrong.
quarters of the way there.
Yeah. And so if you're doing it like this, like for example, on my website, this is my landing page, and I've got my
Mhm.
testimonials and interactions, and I've got a pop up as well that comes up. But then I've also got another tab where you've got a quiz on how close are you to make medicine your side hustle. And then I've got another tab about me and my journey and all of those things. Does it take all of that into account, or is it just simply the landing page that is looking at right now?
So at this point, it's sort of looking at only the landing page,
Fine.
but it does have some context of the other pages as well. So what I would suggest doing is like if you're building out from scratch, you can start building out with, single pager apps or single pager websites. And by single page, it can still have multiple tabs, right? So your whole landing page or your whole website can be considered a single pager with each
Hmm.
of the pages, if you can imagine it being tab-like.
Right.
So it is possible, but the more complex it gets, a single file just wouldn't be enough because that would just be too much code for a single file to handle. And at that point, you would need multiple files. And by that point, you should be sort of, quite proficient with developing this one-pager apps that you're able to handle, figuring out how to do multiple page apps, which you can learn from the AI itself. So,
Hmm.
so this, I thought of someone who has never written a line of code before,
Yeah.
someone who has never done anything before. So that's the angle that I'm looking at it from.
Right. So what? It's not done yet. It's still going. But when it gets done, what are we going to do with the code? Where do we put it so that we see if it's right or wrong, if it's working or not?
So as the beauty of HTML files is that they can be opened with any web browser. So it will be a file that gets downloaded onto your downloads folder, which you can just, double click and open
Open with
from
the
your
browser and it
default,
opens.
opens right there. So it still seems to be generating, and
It's going to be a long one.
I think it's doing some extra work. Hopefully
Yeah.
it's worth
Well, I
it.
guess while it's doing that, we can do the questions because we might shoot over time
Hmm.
for what our podcast is usually like. But I mean, people are loving this, and you Chaudhary wants to say that he or she is really inspired by you and really marvelous personality, and people are loving the
Oh,
stuff that we're talking about. So this is really exciting.
oh, thank you so much.
So yeah, go ahead and ask me one or two questions while we're waiting for AI to kind of figure out my website.
Oh yes, it's done.
There we go.
Uh,
Yeah, go for it then.
so let me just open it here.
Hmm.
So that's the original,
Yeah.
and this is the one the AI rebuilt.
Okay. Very similar.
Very similar.
It's got the same photos. Oh, it's managed to put a video in there. What is that? Go back
Well,
up.
video in there.
Interesting. Ha! It's got my podcast video in there where my an upside down font pointing arrow. But okay, fair
Pointing
enough.
arrow. So what I would do from here is, reply back to it saying that, maybe, fix the YouTube alignment or the
Hmm.
pointing arrow thing. And you can just type
Just
it
talk
out
to
the
it.
way, yeah, just talk to it naturally, and that would work. I have another another version that I had done made yesterday where I got fairly nice results. Let me bring that up. So this is the one that it outputted yesterday. So it's
Okay.
usually never right in the first try. So this
Hmm.
one I did a couple of back and forth, and this is what I got. So I think this is fairly decent, isn't it? It's a nice smiling picture of a deer
Yeah, I got my
host ship
picture straight away.
straight away. Why you've built the action ship, the brands you've worked with. So all of this, I think it has. extracted from your original website.
Hmm.
It took out the testimonials,
Oh, brilliant.
and your YouTube video, properly formatted,
I need
and
to
even
figure
your
out
pro
where that video is coming from because,
is that
oh, I think because on the top right of my website, I have
Mm.
links to my YouTube channel and the podcast. Oh, that makes sense. I might
And then
actually
it's your
borrow this because I don't showcase it like this at the moment. I think I might just borrow this. It'll be cool.
yeah, and it's with the podcast, and then it's gotten this picture of yours from somewhere, and the
Yeah.
badge as well. And yeah, you can jump through the sections. So this one was fairly nice.
Oh, wow.
And the quiz section, when you press quiz, it takes you
To the
to
wrong
your
page.
school
It takes you to the application for the action trip,
location to the
but that's
action.
okay. It's
And then for the
actually created
articles,
tabs.
yeah, it created the tabs. So it's gotten 80 to 85% there. And
Hmm.
then you just gotta give it the final polish. So
Can I say
so
to
yes.
it, can I go
Mhm.
back to AI and say, assume
Mhm.
the role of a landing page expert and optimize?
So what you do is you can copy this,
Yep.
start a new tab, and then like you said,
Ah,
assume the
ah.
role of a landing page expert. And then now you're polishing it, right? You need to make this world class, take inspiration from
Peer.io.
yeah, you can even do that. Yeah,
Peer, you can sponsor us the next season, Peer.
peer.io, and
In
then
the first line, landing page expert.
oh yeah, landing page expert, and then you can just take inspiration from world class executive coaches.
Okay. Yeah, sounds
Let's
good.
just let's just see, and then you can
Paste the code.
paste it, the code, and see what it does. So that just goes through the iteration process. You go back and forth, back and forth. Don't expect for it to get it first I mean, get it right in the first try, right?
Hmm.
And then as you do this more and more, you sort of start picking up the kind of mistakes that it makes. So there will be sort of trends in the way it makes mistakes, and then you sort of learn from it as well. And with time, you get better. With practice, you get better with it. And then in
Mm.
no time, you'd be making apps every single day. And
Yeah.
at this point, your imagination is your limitation, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's starting to write the
Starting to
code
spit something out. That's
again.
pretty cool.
Pretty good. Are we
And
running
so,
out of time?
no, we're good. We're good. I'm
We're
good if
good.
you're good.
I'm good.
Yeah, and we still have people tuning in, so I think it's they're enjoying the conversation too. Um, so if I use Wix to develop my website. Now, if I
Mhm,
do want to copy this HTML code, I know there's
mhm.
a embed HTML function on Wix. Do I just go and put that in there?
So you can embed HTML there, or I can just go back into how we do GitHub.
Right.
So we can take the time to do the GitHub. I think I also got carried a bit away by the fact that I need to talk about GitHub.
That's okay.
So GitHub is a really nice, interesting platform. They're owned by Microsoft,
Okay.
and they allow you to store your code. And I think pretty much all of the code on the internet is stored on GitHub. But let's go. So once you sign up, you come to this dashboard where you can find a create repository. So a repository is where you store your code, right?
Hmm.
You can think of it like the master folder where all your code is stored. So let's give it a name. Let's just call it Shub. Let's leave it public, and let's create a repository. So once a repository is created, you can start uploading files to it. Most of the time, people do it directly from the command terminal of your computer, but we don't need to go there. we can upload from the website itself. So the file that I created, I'm just gonna upload it here
Mm-hmm.
and then commit the changes. So that file is uploaded here. I've named it index.html,
Mm-hmm.
and this is your landing page code. So you come back here, this is your main page. You can go to settings. Now, once you go to settings, you go to GitHub pages. So GitHub pages is what we are going to use to host our website on the internet, right? So
Right.
that's so that you get a link and you type that link and you get your website instead of you running it from your own computer locally, which was what we did earlier. The downloaded file, we opened it in our browser, right?
Hmm.
So now we come to GitHub pages. What you gotta do is you gotta go, the branch is where you save your code. You can still save different branches of your code with different changes. So that's how you keep track of changes. You go to the main branch and then you hit save. You click main so that it selects the main branch and then you click save. And that's it. You have now deployed the website live. You can even use your custom domain. So for your case, you can put coachwithshub.com here and then it can link. It'll give you the instructions on how to do that. Pretty straightforward. If you go to actions here, you can see it being deployed. So deployment is the process in which the code gets uploaded all over the internet, right? So that's what it's doing now. It's in progress. We gotta give it a couple of seconds so that
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
deployed there.
A lot of people might at this point be thinking that like, oh my God, this is so complicated. Like there's three different softwares and like I got to do e-learning for all of them and like figure out how it works. And at the same time, part of my brain is going like, this is so much faster than it used to be. Like
Mhm.
before, if you had to like get to the point of being able to develop a website, writing loads and loads of HTML code by hand was so painful. And then at the end of it, you missed out like a forward slash or a backslash or something, and you just have to start all over. And comparing that to just like trying to figure this out. So if someone's thinking that this is too much hard work for them to like enter into the world of tech and development, then it's probably not, because it's going to take you a lot less time than it used to at any point in the past. And it's on your fingertips and like so many places available where you just create the code and then you just got to play around with it and improve it. So it feels a bit overwhelming, but I think it's a quick learn and a very rapid growth to the
Mhm.
top in terms of the learning curve, right?
Exactly. And there are platforms which integrate all three different softwares into one. But I think it's important for us to learn in the long term how everything works. What are the different steps of this development, this deployment, and knowing the differences with it can help us in the long run as well, because when things break, we need to know where it has broken, at which point. Otherwise, we wouldn't know where to fix it from, because even AI wouldn't we wouldn't be able to guide the AI to say, I think it broke where it was getting deployed. Could you figure out what went wrong? So at least for us to guide the AI, we need to know uh, our basics, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's also important. So it has deployed now. So this is the link for the website that the AI has generated. So
Awesome.
yeah, if you'd like, you can share it with your audience right now. It's what we just built and
Oh yeah,
deployed live.
you can
How
put it
do
on the
I?
chat in this. Go to
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Oh, you yeah, you can share it here. You can share it here, and I'll
Where,
put it in the thing.
where's the chat?
Just click on live stream chat.
We're infiniting.
Yeah, studio chat. Just post it there.
Okay. Sorry about the
No
infinity.
worries. Yeah, and what did it finish the code on the new one?
Yeah. So this is the polish that we had asked for.
Let's see what it looks
But
like.
yeah, let's see what it looks like. But note here. that we haven't given it any sort of specificity in terms of the instructions. Just asked it to polish, and that's it. So let me
Assume
open
and
it.
use its own inspiration.
Assume and use its own interpretation. So let's see what it has done. So it has, I think, made the
Copy
fonts a little
different.
bit. Yeah.
Wait, I want to read this. I want to read this. Feeling stuck, doctor? It's time to lead your next chapter. The Clinician Impact Action Ship, your dedicated space to move from career crossroads to confident action. Redefine your success with greater fulfillment, freedom, and
Freedom.
impact without abandoning your
Abandoning
hard-earned
hard
experience.
ex
Not bad. Not bad.
man.
Okay. And I'm still floating in the middle of nowhere, but that's okay. Okay, so
It's,
it's tried to do something about the copy in the thing as well.
not.
Interesting. So it hasn't actually changed the format too much. It's really just worked on
Mm,
the copy a lot.
mm,
What's it said there? Clarity and the level above. Just so clarity, credibility, and momentum. It's stuck to the same thing and the same images. Okay.
okay. Okay. Interesting. So leverage your experience, don't start from scratch.
This is very cool because what it's done here is it's
Mm,
actually drawn from a different page. It's
mm,
drawn from the application page and then brought it onto my home screen.
mm,
I actually like it. It's pretty neat.
mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Sometimes it does crazy things, and then you're like, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Meet your coach and strategist. Okay. Yes, I'm ready to lead my change. I think it's changed all these call to action buttons, isn't it?
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So it feels very much similar to using ChatGPT to edit like a paragraph that you've written out. But then these are like things you can see. Really exciting,
So
really interesting.
really exciting. So, what I have shown here is AI Studio from Google, but the same principles work with any platform that you choose. So, essentially, those five frameworks which I spoke about, right? So, doing the thinking, picking up the right framework, having a sort of checkpoint system to keep track of your changes, being prepared for a lot of back and forth, a lot of debugging, and making sure that you always include the context. So you saw earlier, I opened a new tab and started asking, we did asked it to polish. So making sure that we are including the files, and otherwise it would just hallucinate.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Neat. Wow. Thank you so much for showing that to us and taking us all through that journey so people will know if they're ready for it or not. And if you're thinking you're not ready for it, you haven't tried it yet, then definitely do give it a try. If you have any questions, I'm sure you can reach out to Faz
Yes.
or GitHub and lots of forums out there as well, it would seem. Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Faz. I think with that, I'll give you about 10 minutes for something you want to ask me, and we can kind of wrap up at the end of that.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that I have faced here in the UK particularly is being able to juggle both of my responsibilities, being a clinician, especially an A&E doctor. I'm sure you would relate to that as well. I absolutely love A&E and I wish I could do it, but it's very difficult to find the balance between that and the things that I'm passionate about. And I was wondering if there are, opportunities within the NHS itself where skills beyond clinicians are, in need, and if you know of things like that. So that's something that I've seen that I've faced challenging from a professional perspective. And also from a personal perspective, I think having self-advocacy and balancing that with humility, right? How do I sort of sell myself without sounding, for a lack of a better term, arrogant or, something like that.
Yeah,
So I think those two are some of the challenges that I have faced, and I think you'd be the right person to help me out
interesting.
with this. What do you think?
Yeah, let's dig into that. So, when you talk about balance between the clinical and non-clinical work, what does that look like? And do you purely mean time? You don't have enough time to balance them, or what does that mean for you?
I think it's certainly the time aspect, the clinical where I'm not able to give in enough time for my other adventures, or if I do have to give time for my other pursuits, it comes at the cost of, my social life, things like that. Maybe I was looking forward to, going out with my friends this weekend, but then, I have to, do some coding
Hmm.
responsibilities that are
Yeah.
in the back of my head. So things like that. Particularly
Yeah.
regarding timing, and when the timing is as awkward as A&E rotas, so you can
Yeah, A&E
imagine.
rotas are painful, especially as an SHO. I guess if you were to think about like maybe 3 year, 5 years down the line, what does that optimal balance look like for you?
I would say, you know, 2 days a week or 3 days a week, I'd certainly be in the hospital, and there's just a time, I can pursue my interests. So that's what
Yeah.
I would look at, yeah, 2 to 3 days a week of clinical work, something like that.
Yeah, that's very similar to what I do at the moment. So I work
Mm-hmm.
clinically Thursdays, Fridays, and some weekends.
Mm-hmm.
I get Mondays, Tuesdays, and most Wednesdays for my coaching, which includes running the whole business. So all of the conversations, marketing, LinkedIn, everything else, developing my
Mm-hmm.
website, playing with AI, and then actually coaching people as well. And the action ship runs every Monday at 5:30. So I do that as well. So that's how I split my time, and that's a 50% rota. So that means that instead of having just another 2.5 years to become a consultant, I now have 5 years to become a consultant. But that's
Mm-hmm.
okay for me. I think for me, that is a good balance between my passion and something else. Um, the way you structure that within the 50% is really up to you. So once you've scaled down your clinical time or like your training time, if you're in a
Mm-hmm.
training post down to 50%, the other 50% is up to you. So you could look for jobs within the NHS. Is there a need? Yes. Is that the best value for your skills? Is an arguable question.
Mm-hmm.
You're also then always competing with people who might have been doing development or coding for a really long time and don't charge as much as a doctor would. Um, there's some nuances in there, but the idea is really like, where does your unique value lie? And I think going back to your discussion earlier, it's likely going to be at that intersection of you being a doctor and being able to develop and use these AI tools. So then that opens up the bigger question, also something you mentioned earlier, which is the bottom up approach of what's the problem you're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get more and more clear on what is the problem that you want to be known for solving, something that you're really passionate about, something that really lines up with your entire career narrative, which positions you as the right person to be solving that problem, that's when opportunities start to open up for you. And that's when it makes a lot of sense to say that, hey, I'm going to give 50% of my time to the clinical work, but I'm also going to do this 50% of the time because that matters a lot to me and that matters a lot to the world, and kind of position it that way. As I'm saying that, what's kind of coming up for you in your mind?
That's interesting that you say that. Yes, absolutely. Something as an intersection is where my skills would come into picture, because, like you said, I would never be, a developer who would be, formally trained, just able to give their full time. I would never be able to compete with something like that. So, like you said, of course, I cannot be fully a developer developing something else and doctor doing something. It's got to be something in the intersection. So then that comes into looking out for opportunities where, both those skills come into play. But my question then becomes, how are there frameworks within the NHS, and in your experience, people who have
Yeah.
gone down that path, including yourself? What do you feel? Is there something that you would do different, or would that something that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I think it's a changing landscape. Actively at the moment, there is
Mm,
a clinical AI fellowship, which is
mm,
a national fellowship only for trainees. So you have to have a training number to be able to apply to that. It preserves your training number and you get experience and participation within clinical AI projects
mm,
across various fields. And that's, again, a national thing. There's also, I assume this is happening regionally across the country and internationally, but I know Oxford's definitely set up a clinical AI research network most recently.
Mm.
And so these are all kind of clinicians with interest in AI and tech and development coming together and saying, okay, how does it apply? And what is the problem that needs to be solved, and which of those problems are you the right person to solve? And if you figured out those bits, that generally tackles the other question you had as well of like, okay, how do you sell yourself without coming across as obnoxious, right? Because you don't showcase yourself based on what you do. You showcase yourself based on the value of what you've done. And even more than that, you showcase based on why you've done it, right? People resonate with the reason behind why you've done certain things. Like saying that you're a doctor seems fancy because everyone's like, oh, you've done it because you must want to help people and it's a very noble profession. And it's just a general assumption that people have. And it's an easy thing for us to say because I think unless you have that in you, it's hard to become a doctor, right? Now, so that's the why behind why you do it. And that's why you feel so confident and comfortable telling people you're a doctor. Whereas if you say, I don't know, you're a poker player, for example, right? You could be like, most people would assume that you just want money. You just want quick money. You want to spend it on things that are very superficial. But if you turn around and have a story of saying like, oh, you grew up as a son of a maths professor and you could see patterns in things that mattered the most. And that's what really began your journey of pushing maths to the limit and picking up patterns and recognition. And, just as an athlete looks for the hardest game to play, you found poker to be the hardest game in that sense. And that's why you became a poker player. And then you've taken a story, a narrative that explains your why of why you're doing that, which really portrays and positions you very differently, even though at the end of it, the what remains the same, but the why is what resonates with people. So I think a big chunk of doing that confidently is figuring out those bits. I'm doing a talk next week on the 5th with the More Than Medics team. We're calling it the inner game of making medicine your side hustle, because I think 90% of it is about all of this. It's about like, what is your unique experience? What is the value of that experience? Why do you do what you do? And how do you position it in a way that makes sense to everybody else and really showcases your value to the world? Does that ring some bells, I guess?
Yes, yes,
Slightly
it does.
different thinking, but I don't know what did you like about what I said?
So I think, it perfectly ties around the whole conversation that you've had over the last 1 hour, right? It's essentially me talking about my story, building up to it, why I do what I do, and how I got here. So, but while that's nice and interesting, I think it's often challenging to put it all together in a very short span if you've got 2 minutes to talk about this in a short detail. But then that's really an unfair question because then you need those 2 minutes to capture attention and then you build up with your story. So I really like it. And then I think at the end of the day, it is the stories that we tell ourselves that mold who we are, how we look at ourselves. And I think being genuine and honest that way, I think that's the right approach, like you said. So probably look into it more, explore more into why I'm doing this, and then, showcase that more and the past achievements. And I think that people would resonate, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
said,
that's
yeah.
exactly it. I mean, we do this as the setting foundation when people join the action ship because it really creates the narrative and helps you make the right decisions moving forward with
Mm.
authenticity. A big book that I'd highly recommend to everybody is Start With Why. It's a bit of a hard work to figure out what your why is, but when it comes together, it really comes together. Like for me, my why statement is to give people clarity to take action when it matters the most to them. And when I look at that from the emergency medicine lens, it's like, yes, of course, they're coming to me in the emergency department. They need to take action when it matters the most. And like the way I do things is in a way that allows people to take action. It's not just for any other reason, really. It's about that clarity of decision taking for me. And the same thing flips across into the coaching world as well, because when I work with people, I don't work to help them feel better. I don't work to help them, you know, I make more money. I do my work so that they have the clarity to take action. And so the same thing applies across everything that you do if you've gotten the why correct. So That's a little bit of hard work that I think it goes a really long way.
Yeah, just like vibe coding, isn't it?
Just like vibe coding. Yeah. Amazing. So thank you so much for your time, Faz. I think this has been a fantastic conversation and a lovely episode. I don't see any questions in the comments just yet. If anybody's got questions, put them in. We will be coming to them soon. You Chaudhary is asking, what's this called? Sorry, I've just seen your comment. If you're talking about the book, it's called Start With Why. And if you're talking about the Action Ship, that's my group program that you can find on my website as well. I can put the link to my website in the comments. All right, so I'll let questions come in, but before that, I'll just do a quick outro. I'll say thank you for tuning in to Medic Side Hustles. Our next podcast is with Dr. Ross McKean, talking about how he built and launched Medisom. And that's going to be on the 3rd of June, again, live on LinkedIn. Faz, do you have any last questions or actions for our listeners to take?
Not really, but I would encourage people to look into the problem solutions that they can find. And right now, like I said earlier, your imagination is your limitation. So do what loves, I mean, do what you love and, love what you do. That's it. Have a nice day.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. And a very special thanks to Dr. Akash Vijayan for putting
Mhm.
together the intro music, especially for this podcast. I hope the conversation sparked some ideas and inspired you to think bigger about your career. Until next time, stay curious, keep solving big problems, and remember, you have the power to do something extraordinary. See you soon.
Bye.